to our awards. Let me start. Good morning. I'm Sharon Suber, New Jersey, State President of American Association of University Women. Welcome to our awards program and Changemakers panel discussion. The American Association of University Women, AAUW, advances gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. Our organization has more than 170,000 members and supporters across the United States, as well as 1,000 members and local branches and 800 colleges and university members. AAUW of New Jersey is the state affiliate representing approximately 1,200 members in 18 branches and 9 colleges throughout the state. Since 1881, the organization has been advocating for women and girls, fighting to remove the barriers and biases that stand in the way of gender equity, especially in the areas of education and employment. We have advocated for federal, state, and local laws and policies to ensure equity and to end gender discrimination. Each year, the state of New Jersey recognizes women we feel assist women reach their true potential, demonstrates leadership in support of the empowerment of women, and continues to strive to reinforce political, economic, social, and cultural areas in support of women. Today, we are honoring First Lady Tammy Murphy and Democratic Majority Leader Senator Teresa Ruiz as our 2024 Women as Agents of Change. These two women have worked tirelessly to lift and empower women, making them both ideal examples of the values we embrace with our Women as Agents of Change Award. I will now turn this program over to Anjali Mehrotra, Award Chair and State Communications Vice President, who will introduce the first awardee.
Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce our First Lady. It should come to nobody, and as a surprise to no one, that we are honoring her today, but just a little bit on why we're doing so. First Lady Tammy Murphy started her career in finance, where she met her husband, Governor Phil Murphy, when they both worked at Goldman Sachs. She spent most of her career at Investcorp, a European-powered firm. After her marriage, she moved to Germany, where he was based with Goldman. She learned German and also speaks some Italian. While her husband served as ambassador to Germany during the Obama administration, the First Lady was proud to speak and lead on behalf of the United States of America. As First Lady, her policy initiatives have focused on infant and maternal health, climate change, education, and fostering women-owned businesses throughout New Jersey. She has worked to create family festivals throughout the state to increase access to resources for mothers, children, and families. She worked with the New Jersey Department of Education to incorporate climate change through her K-12 state education guidelines to better prepare our students for the future economy. And she has partnered with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority to increase angel investing in women-led businesses. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, First Lady Tammy Murphy launched the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund to fight the medical, social, and economic impact of COVID-19 on New Jersey's most vulnerable. The fund raised and donated over $65 million in grants to nearly 600 organizations, from food pantries to soup kitchens, education and childcare groups, to housing assistance programs and religious institutions. 21 million of it was in fact donated in the first month alone. Over the years, the First Lady has worked with nonprofits, a think tank, and other organizations focused on environment, education, healthcare, youth and family services, as well as arts and transatlantic relations. She co-founded the Second Floor Youth Helpline in Monmouth County, as well as New Start for New Jersey, an economic think tank. She currently serves on the board of directors and is a charter member of the Climate Reality Action Fund, an organization founded by former Vice President Al Gore. Both avid runners and soccer enthusiasts, the First Lady and her husband are the founders and part owners of New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC, a professional women's soccer team that, in fact, won last season's National Women's Soccer League Championship. Born in Virginia, First Lady Murphy is a graduate of the University of Virginia. She and her husband have been married for 30 years and together have 4 children, Josh, Emma, Charlie, and Sam. And I have to say, on a personal note, this is truly a pleasure to welcome First Lady Tammy Murphy to our program today.
Anjali.
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I have had my video disabled by the host, it says. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. And to my dear friend Anjali, thank you so much for that really nice introduction, long introduction, and for your and President Suber's outstanding leadership at the American Association of University Women. I'm honored to receive the Woman as Agent of Change Award, especially alongside my co-honoree, Senate Majority Leader Teresa Ruiz. Senator Ruiz has served the people of New Jersey as a powerful advocate for change on countless issues, and I have personally been especially grateful for her partnership and support of Nurture NJ, our maternal and infant health initiative to erase inequities and lift up all mothers, babies, and families across our state. As all of you have no doubt experienced, that kind of partnership and collaboration is incredibly common when you are working with women. In fact, regardless of the policy issue on which I have been focused, whether it's from implementing the nation's first climate change education standards to supporting women and minority-owned businesses, to raising and distributing actually over 80 million in grants through the Pandemic Relief Fund and everything in between, I have benefited from the support of a vast network of dedicated and truly talented women. I am so proud of the progress that we've made together, but am well aware that we still have much more work to do to see women fully represented across all industries. It is my firm belief that we can only get there together, which makes organizations like the American Association of University Women absolutely essential. Here you've likely found friendship, guidance, mentorship, even a strong reference for a dream job. That same spirit is what has driven women's advancement for decades, and I am so proud to be a part of it and eager to continue this important work. So I want to thank you again for this honor, and I look forward to all we will continue to do together. I also wish you and your families a fabulous weekend and a special Father's Day remembrance and celebration where appropriate. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you, First Lady. Once again, we are deeply grateful for all the work that you do on behalf of the women and families of New Jersey, and we are honored to present this award to you. I'm going to turn it over to Sharon now.
Hello. Senator Maria Teresa Ruiz was the first elected to the New Jersey State Senate in 2007. She became, at that time, the first Puerto Rican elected to the Senate. Currently, she serves as Senate Majority Leader and is the highest ranking Latino legislator in state history. She previously served as chair of the Senate Educational Committee. Throughout her time in the Senate, she has fought for equity in educational spaces, acting as the leading force in expanding access to early childhood education throughout the state. She also spearheaded the law to build on the federal free and reduced meal program so that all students who qualify for the program could receive breakfast and lunch at no cost, eliminating the reduced category. Furthermore, she has sponsored laws to increase the diversity within school curriculum and strengthen the Amstead Commission. The senator has also focused on expanding employment opportunities for underserved communities, sponsoring bill passages to expand apprenticeship programs in the state. In addition, she has taken a targeted approach to breaking the barriers which prevent people of color from obtaining and retaining full-time teaching positions, advancing legislation to establish educator apprenticeship programs, provide loan redemption opportunities, and expanding alternative route programs. She was also the primary sponsor and champion of the law passed in 2003 that will require school districts to provide period products and bathrooms free of charge. In 2021, the senator sponsored a law to provide all New Jersey parents access to one cost-free newborn home visit, creating the most comprehensive nursing visitation program in the nation. Senator Ruiz was also the prime sponsor of the 2020 law to allow candidates to use campaign funds to cover child care expenses incurred due to a campaign activity. The senator received a bachelor's degree from Drew University. She was 2010 Aspen Institute Rodale Fellow and is a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School's Senior Executives in State and Local Governments programs. She is vice chair of the Essex County Democratic Party and is Deputy Chief of Staff to Essex County Executive Joseph N. DiVincenzo Jr. Also, and not to be least, among all of her accomplishments, the title that she holds dearest is that of mother. So I want to welcome Senator Ruiz.
Good morning, everyone. I too, my camera says, okay, here we go. Here we can. Good morning, everybody. I want to take an opportunity to thank my fellow honoree agent of change herself, First Lady Tammy Murphy, because we have had an opportunity to show here that when the legislature has been working on issues and you have a partnership in the administration, that you can fundamentally get really good policy to a finish line and get a signature and then get programs in place to help people. It is an honor to be with you this morning on this beautiful Saturday morning, and I am wearing my New York Yankees cap. My daughter has practice later, and she is on a team. When Anjali reached out, you know, for a second, I thought in my head, and often when you think about these advocates, these women like Sharon and Anjali and so many of you here, that quite frankly, these awards should be given to you all and not to us. You are an anchor, an ally, and a partner in helping us make effective change in the state of New Jersey. Clearly, nothing was more dynamic and present and clear than when we had the period product legislation, and how so many of you leaned into that space, convinced people that this is a critical issue here in the state of New Jersey, and that we got a bill that was voted on in both houses, signed, and is near to program implementation. I will tell you that women in leadership is critically important. When you think about some of the things that were highlighted in the First Lady's bio, when you think about some of the bills that I've been able to pass, it's solely because of the experiences that I have had in my life and how necessary it is for all of us to have a clear seat around every single table with people who will listen to what we have to say. Right now, anyone who listens or takes an opportunity to say, hey, what's on your agenda, I would argue that the thing I consistently repeat, which impacts women and women of color, is the crisis that we have at hand with literacy in our educational school systems. And one that all of you, the Association of University Women, that when I think about that, and I think about the deplorable numbers of our students not meeting grade level expectations for literacy, that so many of my girls will never enter into a higher ed campus or be given the true opportunity to reach their God-given potential. And so we think sometimes that education is not interlinked with women's issues, or that education is not interlinked with the criminal justice system, or that it's not a taxpayer issue. I go back to it consistently over and over and over again. Fix a school, a new building, resource those teachers who are committing themselves to the most important profession in the world. Make the investment in human capital from the womb to taxpayer, and watch this state thrive in ways that we haven't seen it before. When you look at the numbers of the general population in 3rd and 4th grade, where over 50% are not meeting literacy expectation levels, and when you peel that back and look at Latino and African American students, that gets as high as 75 and 76%, we should all be afraid of what the outcomes will be if we don't lean in and make true investment into these spaces. And so I will just say to all of you, thank you for recognizing the work that I have been doing for over 16 years. Count on me to be a partner and a persistent, passionate individual, even if I'm not elected in office, to advocate for women, because we do understand, at least I do. And it's interesting because when you have these conversations with your male counterparts, they do realize that we are capable of doing so many things at one time and doing them extraordinarily well, and oftentimes even better. But it's 2024 and I still am reading headlines the first. And sometimes I'm filling those spaces. And I say to myself, when will we get to an opportunity where it's just the men? And I have to lean into that consistently because I have a 7-year-old at home. And I want her to grow up in a world that's going to be slightly better and easier than what I had. That when she speaks, she will not have to repeat herself 5 times to be heard. That when she enters a room, no one will stereotype her because of her, perhaps if she has an accent or goes between English and Spanish, or because they know her zip code. That she will grow up in a world that there will be an equitable space for her to fail and for her to grow, but without judgment in the beginning, so that she could be the best possible human being in this city, in our county, in the state, and in this country. So thank you to everyone. Congratulations, Anjali and Sharon, for bringing us all together. Happy Father's Day to anyone who's been a mentor and a caretaker of any child in the state. I hope you enjoy this weekend, and let's get into the budget season because it's upon us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're back to Anjali.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you both to the First Lady and to Senator Ruiz. As I'm sure all our audience members can see, we are definitely in awe of them, and they are an inspiration for what we can do for women and children in this state. And as our work with AAUW continues, I am really honored to also bring in our panelists who, as we proceed with the conversation, you will see are all in their own holding the fort and for sure, moving progress forward. So to begin, I'm just going to introduce each one of the panelists and then we'll get started. Our first panelist is Helen Arcanto. Helen has been a fighter for women for a long time and in other areas too. As Chief Executive Officer since 2011 of the YWCA Northern New Jersey, Helen has inspired that organization to fully live its intersectional mission to eliminate racism and empower women by advocating against the oppression that many groups and individuals endure. Helen has overseen the development of a continuum of programs that support women and families in every stage of life, as well as raise awareness and take action to end racial and social injustice, advance gender equity, and promote the rights of all women. Helen served as a state-appointed member of the New Jersey Task Force on Campus Sexual Assault and is a co-chairperson of the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking's Legislative Committee. She is also a member of the Nonprofit Steering Committee of Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. In 2019, Helen received the Crime Victims' Rights Award from the New Jersey Office of Attorney General and the Excellence Award of Victims' Justice. Under Helen's guidance in 2020, the YWCA of Northern New Jersey received a $3 million grant from philanthropist Mackenzie Scott. And these are just a few of her awards. I'm not going to name all of them. But Helen was also invited to the White House in 2023 to participate in the Communities in Action, Building a Better New Jersey initiative. She's a member of the Women at NJ PAC and on the Childcare Research Collaborative at Rutgers University, an advisory board for Let's Talk About Women's Wellness. Helen is an adjunct professor at Montclair State University since 2005 in the School of Social Work. Her love for her work in social justice is only topped by her love for her husband and twins, Julia and Stephen. So I'm going to welcome Helen, a fellow mother of twins. Our next panelist is Claudine Keenan. Claudine is the interim vice provost at Stockton University in New Jersey, where she has been on the academic affairs team since 2006. She earned her doctorate in education and higher education leadership from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, her MA in rhetoric and composition from the California State University at Northridge, and a BA in English and Education from Adelphi University in New York. Claudine began her career as a New York public high school English teacher in the mid-'80s and has served as a faculty member in writing at Penn State University in the 1990s. She served as director of graduate programs at Marlborough College in Vermont in the early 2000s, and then completed a national academic consulting contract for SunGard Higher Education before coming to Stockton. At Stockton, Claudine has served as executive assistant to the provost, as chief planning officer, and dean of education. Upon concluding her interim assignment, she will transition to professor of instructional technology at the university for the remainder of her tenure. Outside of work, Claudine has served on local boards of school boards of education and on the New Jersey STEM team for the American Association of University Women. She has been a volunteer organizing AAUW NJ's youth STEM programs known as Tech Trek every year at Stockton University. She cycles and takes long beach walks with her husband, discusses great books with her older daughter, who is also an educator, and likes to argue economic and political theory with her son whenever their younger daughter is not looking. Claudine does her best to spoil her granddaughters. Welcome, Claudine, and we're thrilled that you could join us today. Our next panelist is Prema Rodham. Prema is a senior associate with the New Jersey office of Fragment, Del Rey, Burson, and Louis, a firm of 6,000 professionals across 60 offices worldwide. Her practice is focused in areas of global mobility, workforce management, corporate immigration, related compliance work, and advisory services. Her experience spans a variety of industry verticals such as telecom, IT, healthcare, pharma, and entertainment. Prema is an experienced and passionate advocate who understands the unique needs of companies that have a global workforce and footprint. Prema is also the president for the South Asian Bar Association of New Jersey, an association of South Asian attorneys dedicated to the needs, concerns, and interests of the South Asian legal community. She is an advocate for women's rights and serves as the vice president of the board of directors for Manavi, whose mission is to end all forms of gender-based violence in the South Asian community. She's dedicated to advocating for women empowerment and works to enhance and uplift women professionals and entrepreneurs. She serves as the co-chair for the Thai NJ Women with a Vision to embrace, engage, and empower women entrepreneurs across the globe. She also serves on the board of Akshaya Patra Foundation as USA Tri-State Chapter. As one of the world's largest NGOs, Akshaya Patra midday meal program serves school lunches to over 2 million children in 22,000 schools across 15 states and 2 union territories in India every day. Welcome, Prema. We're really happy that you could join us. And finally, our fourth panelist is Brielle Winslow-Majad. Brielle currently serves as the Deputy Director of Garden State Equality, the largest LGBTQ+ advocacy and education organization in the state of New Jersey, serving all New Jersey's counties. Brielle was named on the Insider New Jersey's 2022 Insider Out 100 LGBTQ Power List, and since has overseen many initiatives that help bring awareness and solutions to the multiple inequities affecting the LGBTQ+ community. Brielle is also a professor at Rutgers University teaching LGBTQIA policy and serves on the board of the Equality Federation, a nationally advocacy accelerator rooted in social justice, building power in our network of state-based LGBTQ+ advocacy organizations. Brielle is currently spearheading the organization of a statewide professional network for queer BIPOC people to continue the fight for advancements of people living with those two intersections in professional, corporate, educational, faith-based, fraternity, government, and many other spaces. Membership to this initiative opened just this June. In the past year, Brielle has traveled the state to speak for the New Jersey Bar Association, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, for FIFA and sports equity, for the ACLU on banned books, and the conference board, to name a few. She has spoken on the national political climate, bringing awareness to anti-LGBTQ+ laws and how transformative allyship can create safer spaces. Brielle believes that everyone deserves to be affirmed and recognized in their authenticity. In these trying times, we must not be silent, but band together to show that love wins every time. Thank you for all your work, Brielle, and I'm truly honored to have you join our panel today. Thank you all. So let's get started. As you can see from the intros, today we have 4 panelists that are truly leaders in their communities. And we obviously want to get to know about their work and what they do as leaders. But I also think it's important that we share their journeys as women and individuals. So we would like to know a little bit about their stories. So I'm going to get started with, I'm going to ask Prema to get us started.
Thank you so much, Anjali, and thank you to AAUW for inviting me here to be a panelist as a change maker alongside my esteemed panelists. I'm truly honored to be here. My story is about second chances and what you make of it. I tell people all the time, never underestimate the power of pursuing a second chance or an opportunity life gives you, because life has a unique way of bringing you to where you belong. When I decided to pursue law as a career 18 years after my undergrad degree, I realized the privilege and the responsibilities that come with it. Today, I am truly humbled to be an immigration lawyer serving our community and working for the world's largest immigration firm, Fragaman. But with privilege comes a lot of responsibility, a responsibility for us to give back to our profession, our communities, and to uplift and empower women and help them identify their strengths, passion, and achieve their dreams. Providing women an environment free from all forms of abuse and a safe place for women to thrive is critical for their freedom, empowerment, and advancement. The organizations that I volunteer for are contributing towards this ultimate goal of ensuring it leads to women empowerment and gender equity. And so that's where I wake up every morning thinking that what can I do today to make a difference in someone's life? On a personal note, I grew up and was raised in India, moved here when I was 23, and 18 years later, I decided to go to law school. And today, what I do is very much part of my past and how I grew up and my cultural background as well. I have a 29-year-old son who's an engineer, and he is the apple of my eye. I raised him mostly as a single mother, and I'm very proud of him today. He's married and lives in Dallas, and we often have discussions about how he should get engaged and find his passion to find something to give back to where he is today. Thank you. Back to you, Anjali.
Thank you, Prema. I'm going to ask Helen to share a little bit about her story.
Thank you. And thank you so much for including me today. It's my absolute honor to be with all of you, our tremendous honorees, these amazing panelists. And, it's funny, when I get asked this question a lot, and I think journeys are so important to share because we work a lot with young people. And I do believe that when you're younger, sometimes you think there's a straight line to places, and the reality is there is not one. And I also sometimes think, that when I get asked this question, there should be some like life-altering story to tell. And I don't really have one exactly. But, what I think I can say is that, I'm first generation Greek. I grew up with my parents just raising me of the mindset that's very kind of embedded in my culture is that everybody is welcome and that you help where you can. And it's honestly really been that simple. I remember in kindergarten watching a child get bullied and looking around and feeling very helpless and just jumping in between to stop it. And in some ways, I feel like that just set my path for life to, end up working, throughout my high school and college days and getting involved in a lot of advocacy efforts and social justice efforts and protests when it came to tuition hikes or whether it came to, ways of folks being treated, just joining in. And that ultimately made me work in legislative offices and politics and then becoming a social worker, by training and, ultimately realizing that traditional social work in the clinical sense was not my path, but community organizing social work really was in terms of bringing folks together. And, ultimately that brought me to my work at the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, where I ended up doing child abuse work, brought me to the South Ward of Newark, where I was the founding executive director of Winona's House, which was a child advocate, the first co-location child advocacy center in the state of New Jersey, and then eventually brought me to the YWCA, which really cemented my path to along the way of becoming an adjunct professor at Montclair State, where I went undergraduate and wanted to give back because they had started a program in child advocacy and I was doing that work. So I called them and said, hey, how can I help? And it turned out that's how I became a professor, which I'm still doing all these years later, almost 20 years later, still a professor. But, I think in all the spaces I've been, whether I've been working in the child abuse field, whether I've been working whatever county I was in, because I've worked in so many at this point, whether I was working in the political, environment, whether I was working in higher education, what I have been very aware of over and over are disparities in all of these places and spaces, and the importance that, there's focus to addressing them and organizing and bringing people together to addressing them. And, so it's really been that simple for me. And then just to look around and see who I can link arms with, which is why, Anjali, it's been always such a joy to bump into you in places, whether it's at the State House or, at the Drum Thwacket or wherever the places that we knock into each other. you know, is that we need to all do this together and see where, you know, figure out where our place is in this work. So that's the journey that got me here. I mean, I just look around, listen, put my head down, and figure out what my role is to help. It's kind of that simple.
Well, thank you, Helen. And I think what you just said is really important, you know, about sharing our stories, because I can tell you, like, I definitely did not have a straight line, you know, and also what Prima said before, that, you know, that feeling of, you know, you're where you're supposed to be, like life throws things at you. And when you land someplace, you realize this is where you were meant to be, is definitely something I can relate to. I'm going to go to Brielle next to share her journey a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that was perfect because what you just said, Anjali, really just kind of encompasses my journey in terms of it's not linear and you never know where you're going to land. And sometimes everything you need is within you to make the change that you want to see. So I love that you kind of alley-ooped it to me. But first and foremost, once again, like my panelist said, I'm very honored to be here. Thank you to the AAUW and Anjali for having me here. I'm loving sitting beside amazing panelists, and also being able to speak after, you know, First Lady Tammy Murphy and Senate Majority Teresa Ruiz, because they are paving the way for everyone. But anyways, I want to start off by just announcing my intersectionalities, and I'll tell you a little bit why. So I'm Black, I'm a cisgender lesbian woman living with PCOS. And my journey is one like many, but I want to say that, like, I start with my intersections because as those, I've spent a lot of my time validating all of those intersections, being discriminated against because of those intersections, and then also not seeing myself or those intersections, whether that's in education, whether that's in media, whether that's in any of the things that we are subjected to in most spaces. And I think in terms of my journey, when I was younger, I thought that, you know, change came quickly, like it needs to be rapid, just like most young people, like you do this, you set out to say this is going to happen, and it's going to change, and you're going to, you know, change the world. And so I worked for an organization. Helen and I actually worked for the Metropolitan YMCA of the Oranges, so we have something in common. And so I worked there for about 10 years. And a lot of times there was like a lot of red tape. I was a part of many DEI initiatives. I was a part of many LGBTQ initiatives. And it was always that the Band-Aid just had to be peeled off and things weren't moving as fast as I needed to be. So Teresa Ruiz talked about creating tables, and you know, Shirley Chisholm talked about bringing your seat to the table. And I thought that's what I needed to do at the YMCA. I was bringing my seat to the table, but I realized that I need to create my own table. And I would say most of my journey has been about creating tables that directly combat all of the things that people said I could not be, but also what people said, like how I was told, like women should look like this, women should act like this, women should love like this. And that's not true. So in terms of like leaving the YMCA, I started looking for jobs, and I was like, you know what, being faced with lots of employment discrimination, like in the hiring process, just alone being based on any of those intersections. And someone said to me, you know what, like you might have to be gay for pay before you can be Brielle for pay. And that felt extremely terrible, because why would I want to, you know, tokenize that part of my identity? But then I realized that what they were really saying was that representation matters. If you decide to be gay for pay, you will pave the way for people to be Brielle for pay after you continue that path. And I think that every day that I wake up, I think about how my representation changes for someone who looks like me, someone who loves like me, or a woman who is just trying to make it in a space. And I think that was what my journey is about, is to continue to just make it so that anybody can be them for pay, them for love, and them for lived equality. So yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you, Brielle. Thank you for sharing that. Claudine?
Thank you very much, Anjali, and thanks to my fellow panelists for charting so much of the groundwork for all of our introductions. The themes that you've raised are ones that we share in common with each other. I loved the theme of second chances, that we each get the opportunity to reinvent ourselves as we go. The theme that, helping out whenever it's possible, whenever you see that opportunity. And the theme that being yourself is something that's constantly a work in process, and we rely so much on the network that our fellow advocates in the AAUW are setting out for us and around us and with us. So this opportunity to collaborate with all of you on today's panel is it's a privilege for me. Thank you very much, all of you. As I started out, the first person in my family to finish high school, which was that was a difficult role to play in the family that didn't necessarily push us to do that. I remember my mom saying, "You have a steady boyfriend. Why are you bothering? Just get married and get done with it." And then I stunned them all by saying, "Actually, I'm thinking I'm not going to marry that guy. I'm going on to college." And I was originally interested in this new machine that was wheeled into the copy editing room of this high school newspaper called an Apple IIe. And everybody looked at me like I was weird. Why are you spending your time with that box? But it made editing the newspaper articles much, much easier than the typewriter and the whiteout and all the Mavis Beacon hours that I had spent in high school. So going forward, although I did opt to become an English major with a lot of pressure from my guidance counselors and all of my fellow mentors early on in the 80s in college, I decided that teaching English would be a great path. I still kept up with that technology and always looked over my back shoulder saying, what would have been different in my life if I had been allowed to sit there and program like I really wanted to do or work on that? So coming back to the themes that we talked about, like how can I make sure that girls in the future who don't see themselves as computer coders or don't see representation in science labs of people who look like them. Picture a Scientist is one of my very favorite campaigns that the National Science Foundation has recently launched, with just these beautiful photographs of women from all areas of our culture and our country and our nation, or our world rather, who are scientists in the past and in the present. And I'm hoping for more women to become scientists, engineers, mathematicians in the future. When I first joined AAUW in 2012, it was in my capacity as a Dean of Education, where the new standards had come into the curriculum and a lot of teacher accountability was, so when I was listening to Senator Ruiz this morning, I was thinking a lot about how that trajectory changed the course of what I would end up doing with my avocation. So we talked a lot in those early meetings with the AAUW members locally about how teachers could respond and address the new standards. And just at that time, the next generation science standards were also coming down, and the national organization expanded its STEM camp, science, tech, engineering, and mathematics camp, to allow other states to participate. So a member, not me, wrote a grant and said, do we know anybody at a college who could host this camp? Because that was a condition of the camps. And just immediately, like Helen in the schoolyard, I thought, okay, I could just jump right in the middle of this and get this done. And like Prima, in your life walk, to say, gosh, I've never really been a scientist or in a science lab. I'm going to try this out and be with these young girls, these young women. And like Brielle, meeting women from all over the state who come from different aspects of our sociocultural demographics has just been the most energizing, vibrant part of what I'm learning in my lifelong journey about who women are across a very, very broad spectrum of inclusion and advancing equity. We are proud at New Jersey's AAUW STEM Camp that among all of our competitors in California, in Washington State, in Alabama, in Florida, in Ohio, wherever the camps are offered, we offer the most representative of our state's demographics camp. We have just a perfect snapshot summary of the demographics of all of our New Jersey counties. And I'd like to thank, for those of you who are listening as participants, all of the branch members who participate statewide in selecting, interviewing, recommending our young women who are rising seventh graders to rising eighth graders. They're finishing seventh grade right now, and to come and experience life with women who are scientists, who are engineers, mathematicians, who work in all of those professions and who lead the way, so that they create both aspirant peers and around in their own networks, near peers of young women who will be their support network. We've been doing it for just going on 10 years now. We're in year 9 right now. And we are very proud that our first group of camp alumni are graduates from college, one of whom from Embry-Riddle will be joining us for this year's camp, and another of whom from the Princeton Astrophysics Lab will be showing up just to spend some time. And each of them, to a young woman, has written back to say the camp has really created for them the place where they felt they belong and they could achieve their dreams. So it's been an honor. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you and the questions that lie ahead.
Thank you so much, Claudine. And I mean, this is an issue that is especially dear to my heart. Much like Prema, I am also an immigrant. I grew up in India. I actually moved to the United States to go to school for engineering. I came to New Jersey and have not left since. And it's kind of a little bit disappointing to me that when I look back and I think about when I graduated from college in the early 1990s with a computer science degree, that was actually the peak of women in computer science. And it has actually gone down since then, which is really disheartening. So I am definitely a big proponent of STEM. I mean, every child I meet, actually male or female, if they ask me what should I study, I'm like computer science. So it's really very close to my heart that you do this camp. And we will talk a little bit about more because it really is an inspiring project. So we heard a little bit about a journey. I'd like to go a little bit more detail into the work that you do and why. We talked about what got you interested, but is there any details that you would like to share? What would you like people to know about what you're doing today and why that's important? So I'm going to start this time with Helen.
Thank you. So the YWCA of Northern New Jersey, where I've been the CEO for 13 years now, serves 5 counties in New Jersey, which are Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Morris, and Passaic. I always have to say them slowly, like forgetting one of your children if you leave one out. But we are over the 5 counties. We do have 2 sister associations in New Jersey, one in the Princeton area and one in Union County in the Elizabeth area, and we have hundreds of associations nationwide. But together we all put our mission into action, but focus on how our community needs that mission, and that mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. And clearly, that's an intersectional mission. And I think we, as an organization, over the time that I've been there, for sure, I really tried to make sure that that's how we're living it. We live our mission, I'd say, in kind of 3 buckets, which one is trauma services. We run Healing Space, a sexual violence program for the state of New Jersey for Bergen County. We run reentry support services, which are helping women transition back into our communities from various correctional facilities. We now run Operation Sisterhood, which is the Women's Veterans Program here in the state of New Jersey. And very shortly, and I'll talk probably more about this later, will be the home of the Center for Racial Healing, which will be New Jersey's first clinical racial trauma program, which I'm very proud to speak about. We also do our work. One of our other pillars is our equity initiatives, which are focused on workforce development, entrepreneurship programs, health and wellness initiatives, and also a extreme focus on strengthening the voices of women and girls. And all of those programs are for women and girls that we do: workforce development, entrepreneurship, health and wellness. We have large STEM initiatives, which I'm sure I'll get to talk a little bit more about later. And again, this is an intersectional area for sure. All of our programming does have a specific focus, and we try to be very focused on supporting women of color and girls of color in all of our areas, first and foremost. And the last area where we do our work is childcare. We're one of the largest childcare providers in areas with summer camps and aftercare. When you think of YMCAs or YWCAs, you very often think of that. I see you nodding because it's familiar to you, Brielle, from being in a Y environment. And we also are a provider of senior wellness initiatives. And with all of those services that we do, we are multi-service nonprofit in all of these areas. But as you could just see from hearing about the areas, you could see the intersectionality of our racial justice work and how important it is in all of these spaces. We do have an overlay of advocacy efforts that we do in every area that we work. And I'd say that's something that we really embraced over the pandemic, I would say, is where we started to really do a focus. And I probably can credit our ability to really start to focus on advocacy work to our Mackenzie Scott grant, and also probably some of our racial justice work. It gave us the freedom because of the money to be able to put our efforts in places that nobody else really wanted to pay for, but are so absolutely essential, and grateful that someone like Mackenzie Scott realized that, you know, we need to put money into those types of places to make a difference. And I think that it has allowed us to get active in Trenton, in Washington, D.C., in the places and spaces to not only do the work, but try to, you know, shift the culture, make change in all of these places so that either we can put ourselves out of business, which would, you know, obviously be the ultimate, or, you know, just, you know, continue to make sure that, again, we have the representatives like we have with Senator Ruiz and with the First Lady, you know, make sure that we have our representatives who understand these issues and are having the lived experiences, you know, that they can bring to these issues, the change, you know, and the conversations needed to make the change that I know that we're all, you know, focused on wanting to see in these spaces. So that gives you a little bit of sense of the work. And honestly, in terms of, you know, how I got interested in the work, you know, as I shared, you know, my progression just, you know, ended up getting me into child abuse world and child abuse investigations, and you know, all that ultimately brought me, you know, was kind of the gateway to getting me to the YW because of our sexual violence work, ironically. But you know, I learned so much over my time here because all the other aspects of our work, you know, as I've become more educated and I've learned more about my privilege, more about, you know, my role in, you know, anti-racism work, it's helped me be able to better inform, create a diverse team, and engage and partner with others so that we can be more impactful in all of the places and spaces that we keep evolving to so that we can live our mission.
Thank you. I mean, it's amazing to hear all of the different things that the Y does. And it actually reminded me of something that I think I'd forgotten. So in a weird coincidence, before I came to the United States, I had to take a gap year because I was waiting. I did not get my visa the first year after I graduated from high school. And I knew that I was going to study computer science, so I wanted to take some computer programming language classes. And I ended up taking them actually at the YWCA in Kolkata. So I did a one-year program at the YWCA in Kolkata, which got me started on my STEM education, which is
I have to say, you know, it is, and when I say, I always think of the word awesome as kind of that, you know, it is awesome to think about the international aspect of the YWCA, and also as an organization, how, you know, we have been one of the only women's organizations that has lasted over the evolution of time from when it started more than a century ago. A lot of the women's organizations that have really been active in catalysts of change, you know, in the feminist era and so forth, didn't really make it, you know, all the way through. And, you know, as an organization, we keep evolving. I don't know, I get these things from Zoom pop up on my screen sometimes. Anyway, but it's, it is amazing to think about the international aspect too. And I love when I get to hear about it because it does put in perspective not only the importance of our work here locally, but how it is plugged into the bigger picture. And I always do appreciate, sometimes it's hard to get out of our offices and, you know, learn about what's going on elsewhere because we're so head to the ground doing the local work. But it's so important to realize where it's all plugged in together and where our piece is in the bigger picture. So I'm so wonderful to hear you, hear about the impact that a sister association internationally had.
Thank you. I am going to go to Brielle next to share a little bit about her work that she is doing.
Sure. So I'll do a little flip then, Helen, and I'll start with kind of briefly what got me interested. So two things that happened in New Jersey. One, so while I was in college, I originally went to Howard University, and then I finished my undergrad at Seton Hall University. And while I was there, unfortunately, they had let go an employee for standing up for the No Hate campaign. And in that moment, I had been on the front line of being, an advocate in very little ways, but that one hit really close to my heart, that an ally who showed up for my community was not recognized for how great that work was, but actually let go because of bias and homophobia. And in that moment, I was like, okay, so I'm going to call everybody. I called the HRC, I called the National Task Force. I was like, what are we going to do about this? And unfortunately, we were not able to make change. But I knew right there that in a space that I called home, in Essex County, where I grew up, things happened. Things that I didn't think would happen happened. And then something else that happened, as I grew up in Essex County, I found out years later that Sakia Gunn, a Black mask-presenting woman in Essex County, was brutally murdered for speaking up against who she was and how she was authentically being herself as a lesbian with the same intersectionalities as myself, and was killed for saying that she was a lesbian and uninterested in a male's approaching her. So with that being said, I knew that there was something that I needed to do. I had to carry on Sakia's name. I had to make sure that people were not wrongfully terminated for standing up for their kids or their families or their employees based on who they love. And so as I moved forward and I knew that there were people, and talking about the YMCA, I saw so many LGBTQ youth who needed role models, who needed representation, who needed someone to show them that it's okay to be you. Your life is going to be long and joyful, and that someone is going to love you for exactly who you are if you show up in that authenticity. So with that being said, as I got to Garden State Equality, those are the things that we do. Our mission is really to lift up the diverse voices of LGBTQ communities. And whenever I give this pitch, I always say, we say communities because on the same block, you can have 3 different LGBTQ communities with 3 different types of needs because they have different intersectionalities. And so we make sure that we advocate. So we started off 20 years ago as a marriage equality organization because we believe that LGBTQ individuals, along with everyone else, should have the right to marry. And since then, we have passed over 250 pieces of legislation with our community partners to ensure that there's lived equality for New Jersey residents. But along with that, now we do programming. In all 21 counties, we are working towards 3 pillars. So one, legislation, which Anjali, we've had the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the legislation that affects, New Jersey residents in terms of the LGBTQ community. But we also do health equity and wellness and education. In terms of education, I talked about how I worked with youth. So I was so happy to bring youth programming to our organization, in which we help to build youth advocates who want to make change in their community. Along with that, we educate individuals in Fortune 500 companies, school settings, healthcare settings, anywhere you can think of, community organizations, on cultural competency and how to ensure that not just are we walking into spaces, and we don't want to say it's LGBTQ awareness, it's human awareness, being aware of how to treat humans like humans. Along with that, our health equity program, and we do PACEs. So we work with community healing together and acknowledging adverse childhood experiences and making sure we're putting the onus on the community and listening to what they need, and then creating our programs around fulfilling those needs so that there's awareness around childhood experiences that are adverse, and how do we kind of prepare and give the knowledge to parents to ensure that it's not a reoccurring cycle. And then We focus on tobacco cessation. We work with the older adult population, so we run the gamut from youth to older adults. But one of the biggest things we're working on right now is our gender affirming healthcare map. And we know that there's an attack on gender affirming care, not just across the country, but also here in New Jersey, and there's not enough resources. So what we do is we work with community partners. We train healthcare providers on how to, like I said, treat humans like humans when they walk into their spaces. And then for those who are already coming to the table with trauma across the country, looking for healthcare, looking for someone to help them, how do we ensure that they're getting the care that they need by providing them a directory where they can find across 40 different specialties, LGBTQ culturally competent, trained healthcare providers who are able to provide them gender affirming care so that we can make sure that care is preventative and not traumatic. So a lot of our work crosses the many facets because, like I said, we are working towards lived equality. And that means it's not just the legislation we work with legislators to pass, but it's the implementation of that legislation afterwards. So our work has been modeled across the country, whether it comes to our inclusive curriculum programming for schools, anti-bullying work, and a lot of the other work that we're just doing to make sure that we're advocating for the rights of New Jerseyans. So that's a little bit about what Garden State Equality does.
Thank you so much, Brielle. And, I have to say, I have had the opportunity to partner with Garden State Equality on many pieces of legislation. And I think what Brielle said is it's really important to remember that this is not about legislation that may not, sometimes it doesn't look like it's a LGBTQ issue, right? So, for example, on the bill that we passed last year for peer products, it was really important to me that the language in the bill was inclusive. When I first started working on the bill, the products were referred to as feminine hygiene products. And we know that there are kids in school, students who are already transitioning, who may be presenting as male, but are still menstruating. And so it was very, very important that we passed a bill that was inclusive and was not, discriminatory in any way. And again, thanks to champions like Senator Ruiz, I cannot say this more because we would not have passed that bill without her. We made sure that we included not just the gender affirming sort of language, but also when I first started working on the bill, that bill was just targeting what they called low income school districts. And we were able to include it so that it covers all school districts in New Jersey. So it's really important to recognize the importance, I think, of inclusion in all the work that we do. I'm going to go to Prema next to share a little bit about her work.
Thank you, Anjali. Sorry, I just have this bad cough. So I look at what I do and call it my 4 pillars of strength in terms of what gives me that ability to move forward every day and think about what else I can be doing. And these 4 things really keep me grounded, waking up every morning, feeling that I'm a small part of making a difference. Excuse me. So I think from a professional perspective, my involvement with the South Asian Bar Association of New Jersey is something that I am very proud of, that we are able to assist so many South Asian lawyers, law students, providing them a platform to grow, network, get into leadership positions in their firms, law firms, becoming partners, getting involved with the judiciary, becoming judges, having positions in the government, taking on roles in the community. All these things are part of what we do through SABA New Jersey. And today I'm very proud to say that we have, through our JPAC committee, we have many of our members as judges or going to be judges. There are many partners at big law firms that come from our membership. And we also are very proud to support a lot of nonprofit organizations that are community-based and work towards the general overall wellness of our communities. On the business and entrepreneurial side, I'm involved with the TIE New Jersey chapter, and I'm co-chair for the Women's Special Interest Group, we provide a platform for networking, funding, mentorship, and growth for women entrepreneurs, depending on where they are in their journey of entrepreneurship. We really provide them an opportunity and provide sustainable and easy to adopt programming that will enable them to move forward with their passion and their project. And I think the most passionate for me personally, and the longest that I've been involved with, is with Manavi.org. It is it was founded in 1985, and it was the first organization in the United States dedicated to ending all forms of violence against South Asian survivors. I think that South Asians in general are very susceptible or vulnerable to gender-based abuse. This has a lot to do with how you're raised, how you grew up, and the cultural and social norms that come with being a South Asian in the traditional sense. Of course, children who grew up here, who are second generation, South Asians may have a different approach, and because of the exposure that they have, they may not face as much. But I have seen from working with Manavi and the survivors, just last year alone, we served more than 1,000 South Asian survivors who reached out to Manavi with various issues related to abuse. Now, abuse can come in various forms. The physical abuse is the most common one that we are all familiar with, but abuse can be financial, it can be emotional, it can, we've seen families where, the woman earns and she's not allowed to have access to any of her money, not allowed to have friends, not allowed to go out and socialize, no network, they're isolated. So there's a lot of issues that come with that background, and addressing them needs an organization like Manavi, where we use a survivor-centric approach, and we provide culturally specific and linguistically appropriate services to South Asian survivors of gender-based violence. Manavi staff, I think we have about 14 full-time staff now, and it's run by an executive director. And volunteers are bilingual and speak over 14 different South Asian languages. We also provide services such as advocacy. We have a transitional home called Ashiana, where we can house up to 9 women and children at a time. We have sexual assault services, support services, support groups, where there's a platform for people to share their experiences and thoughts without being judged. A legal advocacy program where we provide legal services, whether it's family-based services or immigration support or court accompaniments, or even preparing documents and giving them advice on how to file certain things. We have an economic empowerment program where we train women who come to us, or survivors, not necessarily women. We are open to serving any gender that calls us for help. And we also create programs depending on their interest, whether it's training them for a particular skill or administrative jobs, or even teaching them English. Some of them may not be proficient in English or other skills. So we have a program where we economically empower them by giving them these tools so that they can then move on to build their lives. We have community outreach and training programs where we are out in the community, doing outreach and also training the local police force, the court personnel, etc., in how, when they deal with South Asian survivors, it's different, and how they need to recognize that. So these are all the services that we do, and one of the things that I'm actively involved in on a daily basis is the 24/7 multilingual hotline, which is a 24/7 line that people can call in with any issues that they may be facing. Oftentimes these calls come in the night when the office hours office is closed, and so we take critical calls at that time, because every second then matters when someone is in danger of either losing their life or, being in a very critical situation. So I think creating a safe space for growth and freedom, free from abuse, is a basic necessity, and every woman and every person deserves it. So this is where I feel like there is more work to be done, and the day that organizations like Manavi or similar organizations, there's no need for these organizations, that's the day we can say that, oh, okay, we have arrived, but we have a long way to go, and the work continues.
Thank you, Prema. The work of Manavi is really, really important. And I think what you said about the culturally competent, coming from that background myself, I know there's also such a taboo attached to that a lot of times survivors can't even turn to family or friends for support. And it's really important that the support that is provided by an organization like Manavi. I'm going to turn to Dr. Keenan now to talk a little bit about her work in education space. Obviously at AUW, education has been our priority and our focus. And I'm really interested to learn, what she sees as the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that question a lot, because I often will say we belong to an organization that's more than 100 years old. And if one of the original reasons we were formed was to make sure that there were equitable opportunities for women in higher education, mission accomplished. Now what? So I often open what I'm about to say about the future for AAUW and work in gender equity, and specifically in STEM professions, that if you unpack the statistics that say more than 50% of college and university enrollments are representing female or those who identify as female in the college classrooms, that there are still glaring disparities. Anjali, you mentioned earlier that you were disappointed to see computer science hit a high in the 80s when my interest was peaked, but I was discouraged, actively discouraged. And we now face a shortage, and I would submit a shortage of the perspectives of thinking as a result of some of the socio-economic pressures on the workforce to try and keep the lucrative paid positions to those who employers perceive are able, on first blush, which is never a good blush, but who perceive that they're able to give 24/7 to any particular vocation or job. And those types of pressures persist in science labs. One of the NSF studies that recently came out that influences the AAUW's ongoing work in this space says that even those lab managers who voluntarily raise their hands to be principal investigators in doing gender neutral hiring looked at 2 resumes for lab assistants where the names were changed, but the resumes were identical. And these were big, large, random sets of hundreds of resumes sent to these lab directors. They still, 80% of the time, chose the gendered candidate whose representation was male. And there's a implicit bias in that. There's a lot of expectations around socio-development. And we're moving in very small steps. I think earlier Brielle said something about, I thought when I was young the change would just happen. Wanting it and working for it and being passionate about it, as these NSF co-PIs all discovered, is insufficient. It's necessary. We need all that passion. We need all that dedication. But we also need everybody else to continue to move along in these directions and to understand that our collaborations are absolutely key. So in the future, what I continue to see as important for AAUW are exactly what this panel has begun to exemplify today, reaching across other areas where we are doing our work to show how many interdependencies there are in the policy and legal areas, in the advocacy and socio-developmental areas, in the areas of education. There's just so many areas that come together to make our future together brighter and more possible. I appreciate that question very much. Thank you, Anjali.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I just want to check. I do have a couple of questions that I would like to ask everybody, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Does anybody have a problem if we go a little bit over? Okay, great. So as you know, as Claudine just mentioned and Senator Ruiz had mentioned before, when we talk about education opportunity and employment opportunity, AUW has certainly recognized over the years that there are many, many, many intersections and interdependencies, right? So for example, you know, I would say abortion and reproductive rights was something that AUW was initially hesitant to touch upon, but they recognize that, you know, women who cannot control their own reproductive cycles, that is a barrier to education and employment opportunities often. And especially when we're looking over a lifetime, you know, the wealth gap is something that gets affected by that. And so that's something else that AUW adopted. So I want to recognize that there are many of these interdependencies that now are part of AUW's platform and what we advocate for, because we recognize that as women, when we're looking for equity, gender parity in education and employment, all of these factors come into play. I'm going to ask some specific questions next about some of the work that you're doing. I'm going to start with Helen. I know that YWCA in Northern New Jersey, as you mentioned before, has been very, very active in the anti-racism work. And I know that especially after the murder of George Floyd, I remember a lot of people who were turning to programs were looking at your programs, and I think you really became sort of the standard. And I commend you for that, but I also want to ask you, why was that so important to you?
Well, you know, I think because it's our mission, you know, and I mean, I think as an organization, and, you know, I found this when I joined the organization, you know, that when your mission is to eliminate racism, and, you know, we're in this whole evidence-based world of trying to see how we're, you know, accomplishing our mission, you know, how are you measuring that? Because obviously we're nowhere close to eliminating racism, and it's hard to know that you're making an impact on that in terms of the acts, you know, that you do and the tasks that you take on. You know, but for us, that was a time, obviously, like many, that, you know, you're just watching, you know, what's going on around you and trying to figure out how to help. And, you know, for me, it was just reaching out to leaders and individuals and asking and listening, you know, to what they needed. And again, it just, you know, I have to say, happened to coincide with two really important donations that the organization received. You know, I think that even after George Floyd, you know, there was this whole narrative that suddenly all the foundations and all the corporations were going to fund all of this important work around anti-racism. But the reality of it is they were funding, like, you know, I don't know, Nike campaigns saying that they were doing it, but there was no money being put into boots on the ground programs, you know, like the ones you're hearing here, you know, to really make a difference. And, you know, we were fortunate to receive two donations. One obviously was from Mackenzie Scott, and one was from BD, that allowed us to really pour money into our anti-racism programming that we wanted to do, but we just weren't able to find the funds to be able to do it. And so, you know, with that, we were able, you know, we really focus our anti-racism work in, I'd say, 4 ways. One is raising awareness. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people who, especially those who look like me, who are walking around this world, either not understanding the issue, or not really having a clear picture on the issue, or not wanting to engage with the issue, but continually putting information in front of them and opportunities for them to learn, and opportunities, hopefully, if on a continuum, we can keep getting them to take steps to where we want them to be by continually putting information in front of them, is one of the ways that we've chosen to, you know, try to make an impact. Because I do think for us, our anti-racism work is a combination of working with individuals and working with systems and kind of making them collide. So we've done our raising awareness work through our 21-day challenge, which anyone can go online and take. It's kind of like building a muscle in 21 days, learning about race, power, and privilege. And then at the end of it, hopefully creating someone who has a better understanding of that they have a role in this, and then maybe then giving them the to-do list to do next. We have our Raising Race Conscious Children program where we're working with elementary school districts in our community to teach educators on how to proactively bring race into the classrooms in a way, not only from your curriculum, but comfortable conversations and so forth, with our young people, so that they're kind of growing up, being represented, being heard, and, feeling like there's a space for them. Our race training, which is creating racial and cultural empathy for mental health workers, especially those working in the nonprofit sector. We know that the reality of it is, and I'm a social worker myself by training, is that there's so much bias that is implicit in the licensing exams for mental health workers that most of the workers look like me, and yet many of the clients that they're interfacing with in their sessions do not look like them. And so if they're not comfortable talking about these issues, then their clients aren't really being served properly. And so we have a responsibility to be able to create that racial and cultural empathy. And then we do educational campaigns like our Unite Against Hate. Then we kind of move everyone to kind of activating people and giving them some to-do lists in terms of some, advocacy efforts and what you can do. Whether you're working in one of these systems, now that you have this information, how can you become a system disruptor in a positive way to be able to make this change that we want to see? Our other two areas that we really focus is one, increasing access. And so we have programs like our Junior Jumpstart programs for, to specifically help first generation children of color be able to gain support to get into college and to be, stories like, Dr. Keenan, who are, being that first generation line, so that we help them with their college applications, their essays, training them on doing all of their interview process. Our We 360 program, which is about a business incubator and helping develop small businesses, again, with a focus for women of color and maintain strong small businesses. This is the first year we were able to do a pitch competition and put $20,000 in the hands of the women that we work with so that they can use that for their small businesses. Our YW Tech Lab, which is about training women to get into the technology field, because we know that's where the money is, and we know that that's where economic equity, advancement will happen. Our programs for our young girls, our SAS girls, which are also STEM-based, same, idea in terms of getting them thinking exactly, I couldn't, actually, I made a note, Dr. Keenan, you're going to get a call from me to be part of our National STEM Day initiative, to sit on one of our panels, because, I couldn't agree more with everything, that you were sharing. Our menstrual equity program, our sexual violence program, we run, one of the first transgender sexual violence programs in the state of New Jersey, in our Healing Space program, a model. Again, just trying to create spaces to create access for all of these important, opportunities, and then engaging everyone in advocacy. As we've been focused on creating safe spaces in New Jersey politics. We created a educational campaign video to be able to use in every campaign on every level, for that workers could understand about how to report issues of sexual violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, any kind of civil rights issue that pops up in a campaign space, because that impacts who is in office and who's helping put folks in office. And so we want to make that change. We have a workplace rights educational campaign. And, we are very active in voter registration and making sure that everyone understands, the issues that are related to our mission and the importance of making sure, I love AAUW's questions that you have out for people to be asking and thinking when they're talking to folks. I mean, that's exactly what we want to make sure that, for us from an advocacy perspective is we'll lend our voices wherever it is, mission linked, for us. There's other organizations that are focused on issues, and I can understand, the evolution that you all went at AAUW with kind of embracing that, the abortion access issue was your issue as well. Sometimes, even within our own systems of our nonprofits, with all the good work that we do, we are systems ourselves. And so there's, issues within our own systems that we have to combat and question, to be able to help our own teams understand where our work is and the evolving space of that as well. So, that's kind of how it all happened. But just to then quickly just share where it's ended up is that really came from our race training of working with our mental health clinicians and some of the work we were doing in the community around the anti-racism and hate crime incidents campaign that we were doing to try to educate people on the rise of hate crimes, and working with some specific families. So for example, the one family that was impacted, the little girl who was killing lanternflies in her community, and the neighbor decided to call the police and have this 8-year-old girl surrounded by, little black girl surrounded by a bunch of cop cars for that. That led me to going to the legislature and asking to start the Center for Racial Healing, because there are families that are being impacted by racial trauma. There's individuals being impacted by racial trauma. All of our social problems, all of our social programs really exist very much so because of racial trauma. And yet no one understands what racial trauma is here in New Jersey. And there are very few providers that even know how to support people that are living with it to be able to help them work through it. And individuals living with it don't even understand the impact and the layers of it. And so I'm very proud to announce that we have received $2 million in the state budget to be able to start the first clinical racial trauma program in the state of New Jersey. It will be threefold. One will be starting that clinical arm that will be free services in the community, so that when families like, Bobby Wilson, who, what she went through when she was, just outside trying to kill her lanternflies and help the community, that her family wasn't able to access any services for that, for what they had been dealing with. And now that we'll be able to provide, be able to work to that. And to that end, though, there are not a lot of programs graduating anyone with a certificate in racial trauma in the schools of social work. So part of it is that we are going to work with every state school of social work in the state of New Jersey to have a certificate in racial trauma. We're developing a curriculum and providing them each with funding to be able to start that as part of the Center for Racial Healing. Ongoing training for all the graduated mental health clinicians out there like myself who are working in the field but yet have no training in this space, and then a prevention and education campaign for our community. So we're very excited about this. We just are getting ready to launch it. So you'll be hearing more about it to come, but it really honestly has been the culmination of all of our work over these years. Kind of, you don't even realize, and I think the others would, I'm sure, have seen this with their work as well, is that you don't even, it's like organic where your work is leading you. And then suddenly you're like, this is it for right now. And so the Center for Racial Healing really is, where we need to be. And, when I'm listening to all of you and your work, and obviously we work closely with Garden State Equality, we work closely with Manavi, we work closely with AAUW, we working with all of our higher education partners, the impact of racial trauma on everybody's, worlds is so profound, and this is really a tremendous opportunity to try to again intersectionally make some important change.
Thank you, Helen. That's actually really exciting, and we will definitely be looking forward to you launching that and learning more about it. I'm really excited to hear that. I'm going to turn to Prema. Prema, you talked a lot about Manavi before. And the importance of culturally competent services for survivors of gender-based violence in the South Asian community. But it's also interesting to me that you're an immigration lawyer, and often in the South Asian community in New Jersey, those two intersect, right? Intimate partner violence and immigration, right? And we also, I think a lot of people that I talk to are not aware of the immigration challenges that are faced specifically in the Indian community, I would say, in New Jersey, with regards to like backlogs and things like that. So can you talk a little bit about both the backlog situation and how immigration really plays out, for survivors of gender-based violence?
Sure. Thanks for bringing it up, because it's a very, very significant aspect of what we deal with when we talk about South Asian survivors. Just to give a background, when South Asians migrate to the US on work visas, they often bring their families and their spouses. And depending on the type of visa they come on, the spouses are on a dependent visa, which does not allow them to work in some cases. So typically they are dependent on the primary visa holder, And even if they are, some visas, they are allowed, the spouses are allowed to work, but their visa is really dependent on the primary visa holder, which means that if there is a domestic violence incident and they have to file a complaint, or they have to leave home, find another alternate home because they are in a dangerous situation, it puts their status in jeopardy, because if they do leave their partner or spouse who holds the primary visa, then they are technically, the status ends here if there is a break in their relationship, or there's a divorce, or any such thing that happens as a consequence of this. So that puts the spouses in a very, very compromising situation, and it adds even more layers of complications when children are involved, because most often the children are either born in the US or are going to schools here. So it becomes very difficult for the survivor to even make the move of saying, okay, I don't need to live with this. I can get out, and I have alternates to this situation. So part of what Manavi does is to provide services, immigration services, find alternate ways of keeping these survivors in the US by alternate visas that we can provide based on visa options based on their background, their education, the status, which country they come from. So these are all factors that we count in when we do these analyses. The other aspect of it is also the lengthy adjudication times that USCIS currently takes. So even after, let's say, a green card is issued and the families in the process of obtaining their green card, it takes years before you can obtain your green card. And in the meantime, you have a work authorization document that allows you to work based on your pending green card. And in some cases, people are waiting for 8 to 10 years to get their green card. So during this process, again, if there is a situation like this that occurs, it just complicates the matter and the process. So there are solutions to all this, but unfortunately, working with USCIS is not a very efficient process. So we have to work around it and find ways to keep people here legally when a situation like this occurs, until they're able to obtain an alternate valid status that they can continue living on. So these are constant issues that we face with survivors, and it's really a battle between their personal situation, how they're overcoming all this, along with family law issues, which could be like a divorce, separation, child custody issues that are entangled in with their immigration status. So it really puts the person at such a disadvantage that sometimes they may even think, it's easier for me to just live this life than to get out of it and have to battle all these different various things that they may not have the support system to really sustain them.
Thank you, Prema. I just wanted to acknowledge that I know that Dr. Keenan has to leave soon. So I just wanted to go to her for a second. And the one thing that I do want you to say is that, what is the one message that you would want to leave for the audience, and maybe an action that our members can take today?
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, everybody. I think if I could have changed the day to stay with all of you, I think that the major message that I want everyone to take away is that finding people who are working in adjacent, similar, or even very dissimilar spaces, but who can, in general, help to advance all of our causes, is a key part of collaboration. So I wish I could stay and keep working with all of you. I do know that I've kept all of your contact information. I'm welcoming and looking forward to receiving information and invitations from each of you to continue the conversation. I'm grateful to AAUW for the work that it does, and for all of our participants today. I'd say thank you very much for continuing to advocate and to help us empower women and girls in the world ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keenan. Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure, and I cannot thank you enough for the work that you do with AAUW. For those of you who are not familiar with our Tech Trek camp, Dr. Keenan basically runs this camp. It's a 7-day residential camp for, as you mentioned, rising 8th graders. The young women come from across the state. They are nominated to the program by their 7th grade teachers, and then they're interviewed by our local branch members. But the really amazing part is that I don't know how they do this. They raise the money for it. So the cost to the family for a residential 1-week program is, I think, $50, and that's it.
Wow.
So the families only pay $50 each, and everything is with volunteers and money that is raised by Dr. Keenan and our branches of AAUW, specifically our Atlantic City and Atlantic County branch. So I do need to mention them.
Thank you again. All right. And that's one concrete action that folks can take in addition to collaborating. If you can find a way to help encourage other people to give, to contribute to the camp, it really lifts so many people into achieving their dream. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will put that link into the chat so that everybody can link to it. I want to go next to Brielle. Brielle, I know that in addition to your work that you do with obviously Garden State Equality, it's really important for you to raise awareness of PCOS. And I have to say that, from the first time that I've met you, what has really impressed me has been your, bringing your whole self to the table, your authentic self. Like I would say you're not apologetic about anything. And I really admire that. And I really, I'd like you to share more about that and why this issue and raising awareness about PCOS is so important to you.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, once again, I just want to say, I'm honored to be here, and it ties into PCOS because every time someone asks me to speak on a panel and recognizes me as a woman, that right there changes lives. It changes people's perspective of what women look like. Women are not a monolith. That means that, there are white women, Black and brown women, trans women, they all exist. We're not a monolith, and our lived experiences are also different. And I think that because of, the kind of like the misogyny of and like societal stereotypes, we police ourselves as women, just women police ourselves as women. And one of the ways that I, talk about PCOS, I wear my facial hair is a part of PCOS, and hair to me has no gender. But even within our own community, we place a stereotype on hair and allow for people to feel like they don't belong or they're not categorized as a woman because of what they look like externally. I want to say that, in terms of individuals who have PCOS, why is it so important? Number one, it impacts our most vulnerable populations. The percentage of Black and brown women who have PCOS is on the rise. It affects their mental health. It affects their weight loss. It affects fertility. So when you think about women's issues, PCOS is a women's reproductive, but also mental health issue in general. I think that, one of the things that we need to do is stop stigmatizing individuals who have it. If you Google PCOS, one of the first things you'll see as a symptom is that you have inappropriate male features. What does that mean? What is an inappropriate male feature? So if we're working towards an inclusive space where people can show up as themselves, why are we categorizing something that people are suffering from as an inappropriate male feature, along with all of the other symptoms that come with PCOS? I think that as we think about how we move forward, what I would say to people, number one, if you're an advocate, and I know it takes a lot of time, and I think my other panelists can say, and Anjali, you can say this too, especially when what you're advocating for has to do with you, it takes a lot of brain power, a lot of willpower, and when it's your job, it's a lot. But for me personally, although Garden State Equality is my day job, I use different avenues to try to make sure that I'm bringing awareness to PCOS, one like social media. And with that being said, I tell people, if you are a Black woman, the system has already been created to not acknowledge Black women's health issues. And that's why champions like Tammy Murphy and Teresa Ruiz, who are on here, who are champions for Black and brown women's just health issues, are important. So we need to make sure that as Black women, we are asking questions. We are advocating for ourselves. We are educating doctors on our own issues, because it has taken, you don't know how many women suffering with PCOS do not find out that they have it until they go to have children, and now it's too late. Because a doctor was not educated on the issue. They did not tell them what it was that they could do to try to combat those issues. And there's more than just what I said in terms of mental health and health issues. Individuals develop cancer in the long term. So why are we not ignoring or allowing a healthcare system that should be for us to ignore individuals who are the most vulnerable from learning more about what could be affecting them, so that they can create families, so that they can live long lives, and so that they can advocate to be healthy individuals? They deserve that right under our healthcare system. So first and foremost, I want to say that I want to thank Teresa Ruiz and also Anjali for like bringing awareness to the women's menstrual health program that is currently being heard in committee, because this is going to be a life changer in terms of bringing awareness, one, to endometriosis and also PCOS, allowing individuals to see themselves in the healthcare system, developing plans to ensure that there's training for healthcare providers to actually know what this is and how do we treat them, but not just treating them in the interim, but the aftermath of what happens as you treat them, and what is the trajectory for them to live a long, healthy life. So I want to say that, the first thing that I would tell people, educate yourself on what these things are. You may not have it, but your daughter may have it, your sister may have it, your friends may have it. We need our doctors and healthcare providers and clinics to know what these things are, because everyone deserves to. If you believe in reproductive rights, you believe in civil rights, you believe that individuals should also be protected under our healthcare to be able to have children, build families, and also have great mental health. So I would say, for me, every day that I walk into a space, representation matters. I'm walking in as my whole self as a woman, to allow people to know that, like I said, women are not a monolith. What we are suffering from is important, and that we have to push the envelope and the boundaries to know that everybody deserves the same right, despite what they show up as. So yeah, that's what I would say about PCOS.
Thank you so much, Brielle. And honestly, it's been a real pleasure and joy to work with you along with this. The bill that Brielle mentioned before, also looks at endometriosis. And I have suffered from endometriosis. And, so often these things, as Brielle mentioned, because our doctors don't talk about it, they go undiagnosed. I know I was undiagnosed for probably over a decade. Before I realized what was going on. Another bill that we championed last year that is really important, that is sort of related, is, and Helen mentioned this before, about how everything is data driven now, right? So when you don't have the data, then a lot of these issues get pushed back. So we passed a bill last year in New Jersey about data disaggregation, which means that now healthcare data, education data, employment data, all of these will have much smaller subcategories, and not just, like the wider categories as like Black, white, Asian, Hispanic that were used before, because issues can actually get masked. And especially prevalence of issues in certain communities can get masked when the data is not collected at a disaggregated level. So many of these issues, these policy, bills are all interrelated, and they affect women in so many different ways. Before we close out, I just want to give everybody sort of like a quick minute. Again, as I asked Dr. Keenan before, is, what's the one thing that you want to leave with our audience, and maybe one action that they can take today? So I'm going to start with Brielle and go backwards.
Okay. I'm going to give two quick ones because I think it's really important. The first one that I'm going to say, and I already mentioned it, is that educate yourself on LGBTQ issues, and make sure that if you have the power to be in a space where you can provide representation, please do that. AAUW, whether that's the YWCA, whether that's any kind of law space, representation matters. So whether that's a non-binary identifying woman, and whether that's a trans woman, whether that's a bearded woman, whether that is any kind of woman, put them in spaces to be seen, because you never know who is looking and watching and how you're changing their life. So the first thing is making sure that we are providing diversity and inclusion in every space that we can be in, because it really is impactful. The second thing is, and I think I say this because I'm currently in Washington, D.C. talking about this, but everybody needs to get out and vote. If you have the ability to vote, you need to go to the ballot. If you're not registered to vote, you need to register to vote. This is a very important election, not just the November election, but all of our local elections. They are the elections that really determine what kind of bills we see on a state level, what kind of books our children read, what kind of representation we have, and what kind of lives we continue to live. So if you believe in lived equality, I believe that you need to go to the voting booth, especially in November. Protect the rights of women, marginalized communities, and all people in general, and making sure that we can continue to move towards a world where lived equality is something that is a human right for all.
I feel like I need to applaud that. That was really well said. That was really great. I cannot, say more, second all of that. So, Helen?
Well, probably similar and along, a similar line. And kudos and, is really that we all have a responsibility here. It doesn't matter what you look like, how you identify. We all have a responsibility to make change. And I think the important thing, and I say this whenever I speak, is that, we just all have to get comfortable with our voices and get comfortable with our power, and that, we all have different power, and that we should all be utilizing it in this space to be able to make the change that's needed. Be open to learning. I just learned a lot today. I was taking copious notes from all of you as you were talking about ways that I think our organization can link more strongly with all of the work that each of you are doing. But you always have to be listening and learning so that you can keep having, greater impact and voting. That's the, as Rel said, that's the ultimate way of making change, is using that vote. But it's all linked. You have a responsibility, keep learning, keep being open to learning, and, make sure that you are using that vote. And, for our young people, and I say this to them as well, even though you may not be able to vote yet, your voice is so important to be heard. You can help get others to register to vote. You can make sure that others are engaged in understanding the views of your life experience. And, the more that you learn and watch the system now, the more of an impact you'll be able to have in helping us change it, in the right way. So, it's for all of us, every age and stage of life.
Thank you, Helen. Prima?
Thank you, Anjali, and very brilliantly said, Brielle and Helen. I really echo everything you both, said in closing. And I think that we're all connected in what we do, and the strength lies in us combining what we do together to make a bigger difference. And as women leaders, we need to be more agile than ever before and find ways to adopt, collaborate, connect, so that together we can grow and help each other succeed. I also think on a daily basis, think about what one thing you can do or say to another woman to make a meaningful difference in their lives and to make them feel special. And if each of us pass this on to one more person every day, we are making a difference, bigger difference, much faster. Creating a safe space and opportunity for education, growth is crucial for a woman to thrive and become future leaders. So it's all up to us what we can do to help this happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. In closing, I just want to say that, when I was putting together this panel for the discussion, it was really important for me. We talked about diversity, but I wanted to not just diversity of, we often think of it just as ethnic and racial diversity, but I wanted diversity of thought. I wanted people from different areas because I really wanted to show how everything is really interconnected. And we saw that today, right? We were able to identify so many ways that we've actually either worked together in the past or can find opportunities to work together in the future. And I think that when we, in all the work that I've done, especially in the women's rights movements, that's the one thing that I've realized is how everything is interconnected. And that if we really want to use our voices as women, we need to recognize that, and we need to realize that it is only by lifting each other up and everyone up that we're going to be able to succeed in, actually empowering and creating an equitable space for us. So thank you so much again to all our panelists, to First Lady Tammy Murphy, to Senator Teresa Ruiz, to Helen, Prema, Claudine, and Brielle. It has been such a wonderful morning talking to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjali, and thanks to AAUW.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Really wonderful morning.